Good evening, everyone. Everyone's popping in, so I'll just give one more minute for everyone to pop on their video. And we're just going to ask that you keep yourself on mute unless you're speaking, so it's the easiest way for us to hear everyone. I want to thank everyone for coming. I know this is our fifth virtual forum, and I think everyone's found them very helpful. And really the purpose of tonight is for you to be able to ask your questions and get additional answers and hear directly from us. So it's being co-hosted tonight by Mr. Zenian and Miss Florence. So thank you both for joining. And what I want to say is that I want everyone to know we absolutely respect any and every decision that families have to make and recognize that it's not easy. There is no right or wrong decision. It's really based on your family, the needs, and what's happening in your lives. And what the hardest part is things shift and change, and what people want to know is how flexible can we be, and we'll do the very best we can to make the accommodations necessary, knowing that things change. As we all saw this week with the governor's shift and pushing school out a couple more weeks. But with that being said, the Chapter Hope administration team has been meeting all summer long, teachers, parents, community members on our school improvement teams, on our reopening teams, to really ensure that we're constantly thinking through all of this work, knowing that you've all been wonderful, and we really appreciate that. We don't always have all the answers, and it's frustrating for us as much as it's frustrating for you. This is new for all of us, and we just hope that you recognize that your feedback is welcome and that it allows us to shift our thinking, and this dialogue helps us improve upon our work. So the way this will work is I'm going to have Mr. Zenian and Ms. Florence sort of talk about their planning around the middle school, and then we'll take questions. So at the very bottom of your screen, there's a little two-person button that says participants. If you click on that, it's going to open up a box, and you'll see, names, and it'll allow you to raise your hand. So that's what we'll need you to do if you want to ask a question. If you're just here to listen, you don't need to do that, but it allows us to see who wants to ask a question. And then what I'll do is I'll call everybody one at a time, and then you just turn off the mute, get back on the screen, and then you can ask your question, and then we'll answer. But we'll start first with Mr. Zenian and Ms. Florence.
So, hello everyone. This is Greg Zenian, the principal of the middle school. Welcome everyone. So we are the last forum to go, and that was intentional. I was trying to push it as I actually wanted to go on August 17th, but we had to get in the first 2 weeks, and we knew no one really wanted to join us on a Friday. But as things changed, I wanted to go later to see if things had settled down a little bit. But as this week has shown, every day seems to be a new turn. So when you get an email from me, it currently states a lot of times as of this email, because I've learned I send out an email and then 10 minutes later what I've sent out is has changed or has been updated. So we're really here tonight to answer questions about what our full in-person would look like, partial in-person would look like, limited in-person, and then what our distance learning will look like. And we will answer to the best we can. We don't have all the answers yet, but we will know more as surveys close. Tomorrow is the last day for people to sign up for distance learning, and then we'll be able to get a handle on how many kids are going to be in the classrooms. We can start setting our pods. Right now, we do have it set up so that there are no desks closer than 4 feet apart. So the guidelines call for 3 to 6 feet. Right now, we have every room with desks at least 4 feet apart. And once we get our final numbers, we'll remove even more desks, and we may be able to get to the 6 feet in certain classrooms. So I'll let Mary Beth introduce herself, and then we'll get going.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mary Beth Florence. I'm the assistant principal, and I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. I want to assure you that Greg and I, as all of the district leaders, have been working very hard for a very long time for the reopening of schools. We're really excited for the opening. We can't wait to see the kids and to work with them, whether they are in person or virtual. And again, we are just working really hard to make it the best we possibly can under all of these circumstances. and how things are changing rapidly all the time. So we'll start back with Gina. Did you want to start the questioning?
Sure. So just a reminder at the bottom, if you click the button to raise your hand, where it says participants, that'll let me see. And I see Kristen Haxton as our first question. Go ahead, Kristen.
Oh, hi. Thank you so much for taking questions and hosting the forum tonight. I'm a parent of an incoming 5th grader this coming year. And so I have a lot of questions about what the plan is going to look like for reopening, just because I didn't see a lot of detailed information in the plan that I saw online. I guess my first question is, if the kids are not 6 feet apart in the classroom while they're attending class, will some accommodation be made for when they eat lunch? Because my concern is when they take their masks off, if they're closer than 6 feet together, you know, if that's really a great idea for them. I also had a question about the air quality and the filtration systems at the middle school. I'm familiar with the elementary school, and I'm not familiar with how those systems are working. So I'd love to hear some more details about the filters that are used and how the air moves about, whether you guys can open the windows in the classrooms, you know, that type of information, how often kids will have access to go outside. And then just specifically, I'm just curious, I haven't heard about any information for 5th grade parents. Is there going to be some kind of orientation, or is there a time to pick up laptops, or, you know, whether my son goes in person or virtual, he doesn't have any experience. Really, the big thing that was focused on at the end of 4th grade, I feel like, was band and chorus, which is now not happening. So he has no information on what to expect. So I would just love to hear what the plan is for that, if there is one. And again, thank you so much for all the work that you guys are doing.
Gina, do you want me to give that a shot?
Sure.
Okay.
Lots of great questions.
Well, let me, I'll just try to bullet everything in an answer form, and then whatever I forgot, please remind me of the questions and I'll answer them. We are in the process now. We're going through the whole building, and we're looking to try to only have secure, stable groups in classrooms that have windows. Most of our classrooms have 2 windows that open. So we're hoping to get some cross ventilation with windows being opened. Most of our rooms have, we have ventilation systems in Ireland. I believe there's 48 of them. There's either 48 or 52 of them in the building, and they each have their own motor, and they've all been serviced. And as of today, to the best of my knowledge, they are all operating. So we don't have any with burnt out motors or any not operating, or the filters have been changed. Jason, our building and grounds person, is in charge of changing the filters. I know they do it sometimes up to 3 times a year, but I believe they're doing it even more often now. So I believe with the start of the year, they're all being changed. And then I don't think we'll wait the 4 months like we typically do. We'll probably do it sooner. So that will help. And then we typically randomly test air samples in the building before the start of each school year. And since this would be my 16th year in the building, the 15 past years we've tested, we've always come in within the numbers that are legally allowed. We're actually very low compared to the numbers. It's not like we even come close to the limit. So that I'm sure we'll do the air testing again. And our air quality seems to be very good at the middle school. We are the 2nd newest building in the district. So, you know, Caller's the newest building, being just over a year old, and we were built in 1989. So we have we're a little more modern than some of the other buildings. The Department of Health has recommended that we keep kids 3 to 6 feet apart when they're eating, as long as they're not facing each other. So we are looking right now to have them, when the weather is good, we're going to push really to have kids outside to eat as much as possible. Even when the weather gets a little bit colder, we're going to encourage kids to dress warm and try to eat outside. I know it's New England. I know we can have a lot of foul weather. I know it can get cold fast, but any opportunity to eat outside, we're going to push that. And we're trying to set up outside classrooms so that every stable group has their own outside place. And then we're also looking to make sure that in the classroom, as I said, they will be, right now they're at least 4 feet apart and they're not facing each other. So that allows them to eat, as long as they're all facing in one direction, which they are. Orientation, typically, this is a big miss for us. We typically welcome all our fourth graders in May, and we do a big, like, 3-hour where they get a tour, they get to visit a classroom, they get to eat lunch in the middle school, and it's a really exciting time. And unfortunately, we lost that this year. And then we thought, no big deal, we would just, do something over the summer. And obviously, nothing has opened up to the numbers that we would need to have any kind of orientation or open house. So we are in the process of we're going to sit down with our fifth grade teachers, and we're going to have to figure out maybe how to do something virtually with our fifth grade parents. I know virtual is nowhere near as, in my opinion, as nice as in person. I like face-to-face. I like meeting people, but we're going to have to set something up with that. And then we are working with Sean Cole, who is our director of technology, for a rollout where students with their parents will come into the middle school, into the gym. They will come in one door, they will pick up their laptop, and they'll exit another door where have sign up times and everything. Sort of like how we did the rollout for the district when we gave second to fourth graders all computers. So if you have laptops, those will be returned, and you will get your new one for your fifth grader, which they will hopefully have for the 4 years they're here. So Sean is in the process of doing all that. I know he had to get all the Chromebooks in, and he had to make sure they're all whatever they do with them to get them ready. So I know that's being done. I saw tons of boxes in my building, so I'm assuming it's happening. And then once we get those dates, we'll roll that out, and that'll probably be a 2 or 3 day rollout where we have all day long, and maybe one night evening for parents that are working to come. So all fifth graders should have their computers before, which is very different for the middle school, because typically fifth graders do not get their laptops till the 3rd week of school. We always go with traditional paper and book and pad set up for the first 3 weeks, and then we introduce them to the laptops. And we sort of set some strict routines in place the old-fashioned way, and then we hand them over to the technology. We won't be able to do that this year, obviously. So that has sort of put another bump in the road. Did I get everything? Did I miss anything? I know you had a lot of questions. I'm not sure if I answered them all.
I think you did. I know I have probably a lot more specific questions about fifth grade, which I can email you about, or I'm assuming maybe when classrooms get assigned, we'll get more information from the teachers, and yeah. I understand that everybody's dates and everything is just thrown out the window. So I'm not trying to be difficult about that, but I just it's a little tricky trying to prepare my son for the decision of going back into school when he just has no comfort level with what he's walking into. So
if you want to email me, I can give you a call tomorrow and we can go into more detail, if that may be easier. And then I can probably go into have a more personal, in-depth conversation with you, if that's helpful.
Absolutely. And just real quick, as far as eating lunch outside, is that going to be just up to the classroom teacher whether they're going to take the class outside, or will that be something that will be set kind of with a guideline?
So we're going to highly encourage it. I don't know if at this point we're going to mandate it. I think most of the teachers I've spoken with at the middle school are they would like to eat outside as much as possible. I think most of the teachers I've spoken to over the summer are very encouraged that if we do open, they have the freedom to be outside as much as possible. So I don't think anyone wants to be in a room, all day with that same group of kids. So I think as much flexibility and movement as possible. I think the teachers are very much on board with that, and they have spoken to us about how excited they are to be able to have that freedom to go outside. Typically, when they leave the building, they have to sign out. They get permission. It's a task, and we have removed all that because they'll be assigned an outside area. So if I go to their classroom, they're not there, we know exactly where they are outside. So it's being encouraged, and I think it's being received very well.
And due to the teaming at the middle school, the stable pods are pretty secure. It's similar to the elementary school, where the teachers will come to the classroom as opposed to the students moving throughout the building. Where high school is a less stability with pod because of the way that the classes run, but middle school is created the team, so the students won't have to move. I think the only time students really have that situation to move would be world languages, correct?
Yes, as of right now, the only time we will not have stable pods, from what we can tell, as of today, is 7th and 8th grade Spanish and French. We cannot create stable pods. So those will be the only times where kids may cross mingle through stable groupings, and then but those rooms will be completely cleaned after they're used and before anyone else goes into them. So there'll be extra cleaning precautions taken. And that may only happen a couple times a week.
And like Mrs. Enian said, the classrooms, there are some classrooms that have 4 feet, but that's with the current full capacity. So that doesn't take into account all the distance learning registration. So once we have that firm and know how many classes, that may move to 6 to 7. It depends on the size of the classroom based on those numbers. But right now, throughout the district, everyone's been able to get between the 4 to 6 spacing for all the desks. Mrs. Jenny and I also asked the question, we double checked with the Department of Health and RIDE around the lunches if we're eating in the classroom with masks down. And they reiterated in writing that yes, if we can keep the 3 to 6, it's fine for them to keep their masks down, eat, and then go about their business. We're also gonna build in mask breaks. Listen, we recognize that wearing masks all day for both adults and students is not an easy task. It's going to take everyone getting used to. We will have masks available, but we also suggest that you find something and start building their stamina with the masks, one that they like, because we all know if you're not comfortable and doing well, it's not going to be great to sit in that classroom all day. But we, like Mr. Zenian said, we're encouraging outside time. We're encouraging those mask breaks at 6 feet, which Department of Health recommends. Same thing with outside. It's yes, we can take the mask off, make sure you're 6 feet apart, and then really being mindful with the students about what that spacing looks like. So our next question is Jenna, Jena.
Uh-oh. Hang on, I'm trying to start my video. All right. Hi there. I have 2 kids. Mr. Z, I've emailed you a couple of times. I'm Jenna O'Brien. I have Hazel and Shay, and Hazel's still in the middle school. Shay just went into the high school. My question is, we initially decided that our children were going to be just distance learning, but we've kind of reconsidered at this point, and we're thinking that maybe the hybrid of distance learning and going to class a couple of days a week might be a better option for us. We kind of felt like we were almost like pushed into making a decision, but now that we have a little bit of extra time and people have time now to sign up for distance learning, is it an option now to switch from just distance learning into the hybrid model?
So interesting question. And there isn't a choice between the 4 phases. So what happens is it's either a distance learning option or the phase that the governor implements. So right now, what they're saying is pre-K through 5 must be a full in-person learning, whether it's partial or full. 6 through 12 during partial would be 50%, and that's that Monday distance learning, AA day for A through J, BB day for K through Z. So we can, you wouldn't be able to say, I want full in person, or I want partial, or I want distance learning. It would either be distance learning for the quarter, or the governor's phased in whatever she decides on that August 31st. In saying that, what she's told us, and she continues to tell us at our meetings, we have a weekly meeting, is that she's using the data that's on the RIDO website. So if you go to the RIDO COVID-19 website, the municipalities are listed. And if you are under the percentage, which we are in Charahoe under all 3 towns, Richmond, Charleston, and Hopkinton, then she would say we're ready for full reopening. Now, what she said is at the time, the 3 districts that are not ready to do full reopening would be Central Falls, Pawtucket, and Providence. So knowing that, what she wants us to understand is that her decision will be based every week on that data. So so if you keep an eye on that data, you should all know, is what she's telling us, what she should be deciding, is what we're told at this point, as Mr. Zenian said, at this time. Does that
Okay.
help?
Somewhat.
Can we change from distance
And then
learning to?
I guess, what did you say?
Can we change from distance learning to?
If this happens, do we have the capability to change from distance learning to whatever the governor's plan is?
You mean like before tomorrow, or you mean once school gets started?
When school gets started?
So what we're saying is we're asking people to sort of stick with their choice for the quarter, knowing that family situations could change. So if something happens that shifts your thinking, you know, something comes up, you would meet with the administration, and it would be case by case, because we recognize that sometimes, you know, I may be in a predicament where if you have a family member who's a first responder and there's a different situation at home, or a family member had to move in with you that's high risk. So we recognize that things take place and things happen. So you would just meet with your administration, and they would take that case by case.
Okay. And my final question has to do with the buses, like, because I have a middle schooler and a high schooler, is it going to be the same day, like the A through J and then K through Z on both
Yes.
middle school and high school? Okay.
Even
All
if there's because sometimes we have some families that have different last names, we will make sure they're on the same day.
Oh, that's great. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I think Carrillo, am I saying that correctly? Carrillo.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank you, Superintendent Picard, for stepping up into the leadership role that you have in such a difficult time. And I want to thank the leadership that we have in place that's been in place for a while. So my question is somewhat related to the question that was just asked, but in the opposite. So if tomorrow we make the decision to not enroll our children in distance learning, and then over the next few weeks, something happens that causes us to have pause for that decision, would we be able to then elect to go to distance learning 2 weeks from now?
So actually, it's the same response. You would do the same thing. You would meet with the administration. I can give you an example. For example, students who have medical needs who can't wear masks. A parent asked me, you know, I don't know if the children in my child's classroom have any medical needs that may have no mask wearing. That may give me pause. So if things like that, and again, that would be where we want some flexibility, because we don't know everything, right? How it looks different.
Right.
So say it would be the same thing. You would just contact the school administration, and what we're doing now is, as we finish those distance learning registrations, we're putting that data into our student information system. And then next week, you'll get a confirmation from, either way, you're going to get a confirmation that you've been registered for distance learning. We're confirming that, or we're confirming that you're moving forward with full in-person or the plan the governor sets forth. So either way, you'll get a confirmation. But what we want to do is recognize that we need to plan so we can do this thoughtfully, but we also know that things may change, and we have to be thoughtful and flexible to make those accommodations as needed.
Okay, I appreciate that. I guess my concern is that one of the reasons that the governor stated she was delaying the decision or the announcement until August 31st was that she needed more time to assess the data and see where the data went to make her decision as to what the phase would be. Yet, you know, and she has medical staff helping her to make that decision. Yet we're being asked to make that decision tomorrow before we have the opportunity to have access to the data that the governor wants access to, so she can make a decision that's informed. So I do feel that we're kind of being asked to make a decision based on not enough information. So I do appreciate the flexibility. I also appreciate that you need numbers to be able to plan, and you can't plan overnight. So as long as we have that flexibility to meet with you later, I do appreciate that.
No, and I appreciate you saying that. And it's not perfect, right? It's a double-edged sword. We want parents to have the flexibility, but we also can't tell you if you have a bus yet. Can't tell you what classroom you have. The teachers, we need all the information to plan. And while it gives us more time, it also makes people pause and say, well, wait, you know, that this is happening now. Why now? But like I said, we're hoping that people will do the best they can to make the best decision at that time, knowing that we all have to be flexible.
Okay, appreciate your time very much. Thank you all.
Thank you. Danielle Buckingham.
Oh, sorry. My question was, I elected to have both my children start with the virtual prior to this new setback date, which is fine. When they come back, can we assure that, like, especially the inside classrooms, those that only don't have windows or have a small amount, I know fans are not allowed, so that ventilation and that airflow is going to happen and be clean. And also, I have a fifth grader who obviously didn't get to partake in a tour of the school and such, and did not do great with virtual learning. However, last spring, however, virtual learning is what we have to do in the fall. That's right for us. Can we are we going to be able to set them up with a pushback where they know what to expect at the beginning and have a clear kind of view of what the teacher's layout is, how they are going to navigate the stuff online, for those students that aren't necessarily organized or computer savvy? And also, when they go back to school, it's a new school, they haven't had, obviously under no fault of anyone, the experience to go there, see things, work things out, and they're coming from separate elementary schools to join a team. So if they're in virtual, will some of the students in virtual perhaps be on their team? Will they be assigned to any kind of team, or will they have different teachers when they come back?
I'm going to let Mrs. Enian take the questions, but I'm going to just address the ventilation. So we've been doing walkthroughs throughout the whole summer, and we recognize that the middle school does have some inside classrooms, and the building, our building and grounds director, Jason Sullivan, has been working through all those rooms, and there are, like Mr. Zenian said, because they're newer, that ventilation systems were built to be able to have that airflow through the ducts. With that being said, and just to clarify, fans are actually allowed, and so is AC per the guidance. The Department of Health just said to make sure that the air isn't blowing directly onto faces. So you would lift the vents towards the ceiling or to the side, so it's not blowing directly on the staff or the students. But we are getting additional guidance for the inside rooms. But right now, it does look like our ventilation system is up to the grade it needs to be, as well as the ducts. So, but where if any classroom wouldn't be, that we would not allow students or staff in it. So I'll let Mrs. Eddie question.
Mary Beth and I also just did a walk through the whole building today, and we are finalizing a plan that would have all our stable groups in rooms with windows. So right now we have 4 interior science rooms that were being used as part of the stable grouping pods. And we believe we have a solution to eliminate those 4 rooms and move them to rooms with windows. So if everything goes as planned, every stable group will be in a room with a window. And then to answer your question around the teaming, we built the schedule, and we placed the students. Charahoe Middle School is one of the only middle schools in the state of Rhode Island that I'm aware of. We may be the only one. We hand place every student. We get information from parents. We get information from prior year teachers. We get information from our guidance counselors, from our social workers, from our school psychologists, from our reading specialists, from our math specialists, and we hand place every single kid. We have a rating system put in place, and then we build teams that are heterogeneously grouped so that we have what I call powerhouses on every team. We don't have one team overloaded with kids and another team with all the struggling readers, for example. We have a really nice blend on every team. So we did that. We placed all our students as if everyone was coming back and as if everyone was going to be in the building full time. Now that we know that we have almost 300 students that have elected to go virtual, and we'll see what their fallout is tomorrow, my hope is that we will keep them on their teams and just have them go virtual. So my hope is that at some point this year, and maybe I'm naive and maybe I'm over wishful, but at some point it is my hope that every student will return back to Charahoe Middle School. And at that point, I would like them to return back to the team we assigned them to, and to get into that normal groove of what a high functioning team-centered middle school looks like. So we are trying to keep them on teams, even if they are not present, even if they're not in person. So, but until we have all the numbers tomorrow and we start going through everything, we won't know exactly what it looks like. But my hope is that we can keep the teams intact. Just part of it will be virtually taught, part of it in person. And then Charahoe Middle School has some of the best teaching staff I've seen in my whole educational career. They will work with students to orientate them to what they need to. There is a little bit of a fear with fifth grade, not because we don't have outstanding fifth grade teachers, just because we haven't met them yet. We didn't even get to give them a tour of the building. But I think our fifth grade teachers will work very closely with our remote students to make sure that they understand what their Google Classroom looks like, what their playlist looks like, how they are going to find their assignments, where to look for assignments, what grades will look like on Power School. So that will all be incorporated into their lessons. They do that when it's in person, so they'll just have to do it virtually and in person, or whatever mix we have. And then they will definitely work with those kids. And then keep in mind the way our plan is written, if we're even limited in person, if there are kids that are really struggling with virtual, we have the right to ask for those kids to be back, to pull them back into school. So if we have 25% of our kids in school, we have enough flexibility and room to pull some of those kids in that just aren't doing well virtually. So, and we already have a list of the kids we know last year did not do well virtually. We're keeping a very close eye on them. So I'm not sure if that answers everything.
It does, and I know that you have the list of who didn't do well, but I would assume, and I don't know, and that would be on, maybe grades or teacher reports. But I think there's those students such as mine that appeared to do well, but although I think her fourth grade teacher was very intuitive and would have definitely reported appropriately. But it was a struggle at home, and I was home virtually teaching with her. This year I will be back at work, so I won't even be there with her. She'll be with a babysitter. So if there is a need, though we opted for virtual, if the teachers see a concern, that would be what I want with them to bring up to me. Look, she needs to come back to school, and I would respect that and would have that flexibility to send her back to school. And that's what I just want to make sure that there is that option. If her independence isn't great, and middle school is where they learn that, and unfortunately they're getting thrown into the deep end under no fault of anyone. I just want to make sure that if it is not working at all, that there is the option that the teachers say, hey, look, we need this kid to be here in person, and that we could make that happen.
Actually, that's a great point, and I'm glad you mentioned it, because you're absolutely correct. That as much as we want our families to have that choice, we also recognize that the teachers may notice that there's a struggle happening, and that we, in turn, could ask for a meeting to say, this is our concern. We think, it's better to come in, and here's how we can sort of maybe mitigate some safety concerns that you may have. But we would do the same thing. We would want that flexibility so that we would ensure that every child was successful. Thank you. That was good questions. Stacy Bolmidis.
Yep, Bolmidis, close enough. Hi, and thank you. Hi, Mr. Zenia. I just want to take a minute and recognize I see other administration on this call, and I also see teachers from the middle school on the call. So I want to thank everybody for their time tonight. And also thank you for responses to my emails. What I'm trying to figure out is what virtual instruction will actually look like. We were asked to make a choice without understanding what that looks like, besides the fact that in all likelihood, students will be assigned to a team that will be their team, whether they're virtual or in person. The only other sort of fact around virtual learning that I have received is that they won't be live streaming from the class, but I'm really looking for like 3 to 5 facts about what virtual learning will look like. What will the instruction time look like? How will they access their teachers? How will it be different specifically from the spring? I'm not in no way insinuating that spring virtual learning was bad. I just know that you've said on other calls that we are going to change virtual learning somewhat based on what we learned in the spring. So that's my main question.
Well, I can answer some of that. Hi, Stacy. where one of the things is, I mean, all the students will, all the teachers will be using Google Classroom as the platform at the middle school. And they have done that before, but that will continue. Actually, in the district, we were using Google Meets, but we're going to be looking into purchasing Zoom meetings because there's a lot more functionality there that the teachers will be able to have access to, where they can do more in terms of instruction with the students and do whiteboards and different things. So, I mean, that will be the platform that we use. And in terms of the instruction and how it's different, one of the things we have, we've updated the teacher expectations and student and parent expectations that we put out in the plan back in July. One of the things is that, you know, the teacher's going to have certain expectations for what that daily plan will look like for work. Another big thing at the middle school, and Mary Beth, feel free to jump in, but attendance, I believe that in the spring, there was like one attendance for the whole day. And instead, each teacher will be taking attendance with their class. So we have the expectation that the student will log on the beginning of the day, the beginning of the class, and then the teacher will take attendance in Power School. So we want to have that, you know, interaction with the students. So I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah, we're expecting the teachers to have the live instruction with every class, and then the students go to, you know, off to work on their assignment, but the teacher is accessible for that entire block, that entire period. And then there's a check-in at the end. Although they're virtual, it's not that they just get an assignment and go off and do their work, that there is that live meeting time with the teachers every period.
And have you put, like, you know, the goal is 10 minutes, you know, 15 minutes of, what are the blocks, like 40 minutes?
Well, it's interesting that you said that, because with Mr. Z and myself, we started talking about that, and we said how many minutes would they have, and it's really dependent on the lesson. One day it may be 10 minutes, another day it may be 20 minutes or 15 minutes. It depends what the instruction is, because it has to be based on the instruction for the day. It can't just be given a set amount of time.
Can I address that? Can I address that, Mary Beth, as a classroom teacher? You know, for what happened in the spring, you know, I required a Zoom, Google Meet at the beginning of every class to give classroom instruction, and those students that were independent went off to do their work independently, and those students that needed some assistance, maybe what you would consider in a classroom a small group, I would keep on the Zoom and we would work together through that assignment. And those students who maybe would escape and not want to stay, we would catch up with them. The administration allowed me great flexibility. When there was a student who wasn't meeting classroom expectations, I would email Greg or Mary Beth and say, you know, I have an idea of how we can engage this student more to bring them back to the classrooms, you know, and gradually those students, you know, once they had their questions answered, then they could go off on their own to do an independent. But oftentimes I had a student or two who stayed the whole period with me, and my Zoom Google Meet was open all day long. I was available all day long for students to come in and ask questions and get clarifications and sit with them and work through the assignment with them. So, you know, if that kind of helps with giving you an understanding of how that would work, I would imagine it would be very similar to something like I did in the spring with my classroom.
And really the only time a teacher would not be available would be those state mandated PD days, when our teachers are in PD and our students are doing virtual. So they would have assignments already posted in classroom that they would be working on that day.
And there's only 5 of those days now with the newest calendar from the state.
Yeah, I'm trying to, yeah, that's got to be fun. You made one.
But all of the other days that we are expecting are the teachers to be accessible for those students for that entire class time.
Okay. And then my only other, well, I have a lot of questions, but I won't take all the time. On my own is you know, obviously busing, you know, when I think about potentially transitioning back to middle school, which is absolutely something that may be in the best interest of my student. I just worry about busing because I worry that if I put her in virtual for the first quarter, that is going to preclude her from busing the rest of the year, which would create a transportation problem in terms of I work full-time, my husband works full-time. So do you have, you know, I understand you don't understand how many children you can transport right now, but what happens if I put her in virtual for the first quarter, for the first 45 days, and then want her to return to campus?
So it would be similar to what we've requested for the form. Like once we get closer to the end of the first quarter, we will send out for our middle school and high school families another request. I'm planning on continuing with distance learning, or I would like to return to in-person learning. And if it's in-person learning and you require a bus, the expectation was that we're a regional district that is working very hard to find transportation for all our students. So that would be the goal, to get you on the bus. With that being said, we recognize that that's a concern, and with limitations, they've told us now that they're going to increase it to 31 students. Students will have to wear a mask on the bus. And what we can do is, for an example, would be the reason why they've increased it is we can put siblings in the same seat, and we can also put students who are in the same pod on the same seat. So, and then they will have to have assigned seating, but yes, it shouldn't make a difference. While what would be a concern is if everybody wants to come to full in person and they don't reduce or they don't change the bus limitations. That's what we've already spoken to the governor, and if you heard our press conference, she's actually brought in the National Guard, RIPTA, lots of different people to help us think through that. We're regional, so there's no sidewalks. You know, you can't walk to school. It's not, you know, you can't take a scooter or ride your bike. That it's not safe. So while some districts can look at options like that, that's really not a feasible option. And we also know that adding more cars to the middle school and high school campus is probably not the best idea. And if that had to happen, we would definitely have to look at staggered times for bus, for commuter, because that would be a struggle. But the goal is to get everybody the transportation. I won't lie, it's not going to be easy. Based on now, we have about almost 300 middle schoolers that want distance learning. So by the end of this week, which is why we get it, it's a double-edged sword for giving us the information, but we need to know how many. I have to be able to say to families, you know, and the governor and the commissioner, and I've told them this, the transportation in middle school and high school could be the reason why we can't do a full reopening. And that's right now something where we won't know until we know the registrations.
Yeah, because my daughter's bus is 3 to a seat.
Right.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Good questions. Laura Lesh.
Hi, guys. I have a couple of questions. It's nice to see everybody. My first question is about, I have a concern about how many how many people, not just kids, how many people my kids encounter on a daily basis. And mostly thinking about just having been in the building from classroom to classroom, their schedule's never really set on a weekly basis. Like sometimes they're with the 7th grade, sometimes they're with the 6th grade, sometimes they're with the 5th grade. Whether or not they're going to be with a set pod now, so they're not moving. Like I'm worried that, like especially moving from pod to pod, that they're going to be encountering a lot of people, and then they're going to be in close proximity because classrooms don't really have a whole lot of space for them to branch off with kids. And in the past, they've gone to like some of those little side offices and the cafeteria, and they've pulled out to other places. Now, if they're going to be in the classroom working one-on-one with kids, that's going to put them in close proximity with my kids. And I'm just worried how many people they're going to encounter who have also been in other pods. Like obviously the specialists, obviously the AAs, obviously the special teachers. those type of things. How many people is there a cap like for pods, how many people they're going to encounter? Because I'm kind of worried about that. We've kept our circle really small.
Yeah, that's a great question. And we've asked that question several times. And what we've been told by the Department of Health is that there is no maximum or minimum number of pods. The purpose of us sort of tracking our pods is for contact tracing in order to make sure that we know who is in contact. What the Department of Health told us was that what we want to be mindful of is they basically have sort of an algorithm of a perimeter, which is why we have to keep assigned seats. So they would ask us for the classrooms, they would ask us who sits within this perimeter, 6 feet apart, had longer than 15 minutes of exposure, and then they would map with us that contact tracing. But you're right. I mean, in our elementary schools, there's before school programs, there's after school programs, there's students in high school that have athletics, there's, and then we can't even begin to think about what happens when they go home and where their parents work, where their siblings go. And it's an almost impossible task, but what they've told us is what they expect of us, and what we've already done is create systems to trace every pod. The middle school did a really nice job because of the teaming. So the kids are pretty stable unless there's that one time where students in world language have an additional sort of pod. Teachers come to them, but we've been working, what they've told us is wear the mask. Teachers are asked to wash their hands before and after leaving every class, avoid touching your face, and then keeping the distance. So that if we're using a mask, social distancing, hand washing, sanitizing, then they told us that we should be in a very good place.
Okay, so then my second question, and this is on the reopening plan that I saw, has to do with the state and like the RICAS testing. Are they going to be testing at the level that the class that they're in right now based on the stuff that they learned last year and this year combined? Like the fifth graders didn't take their fourth grade RICAS, and we don't know where their knowledge is based on distance learning and how they did with that. Are they still going to be taking the same fifth grade test this year that they would have taken previous years? Are they going to be teaching to that test?
Right now, that answer from the Department of Ed is yes, that they're keeping all the testing requirements in, but I'll let Jane speak to sort of how the teaching and learning team worked to ensure that we know where kids are beginning so we can plan for that.
So last spring, we didn't do the STAR assessment at the end of the year in math and English, but it was for multiple reasons, but that's one of the changes for September is we are planning to do STAR, whether a student is learning through distance learning or in person, because we've got a protocol now on how to administer that remotely. So that will really give us a good sense of where a student is in terms of their knowledge, in terms of English and math, which is the RICAS test. And yes, right now, as of now, there's no waiver. There still will be state testing, but that wouldn't be until May, April, May, and we'll have a lot of time between now and then to really assess where students are, see if there's any gaps and meet those gaps. Also, our teachers, as part of the district PD day, one of the sessions they're going to be working on is as grade level teams, or at the middle school in the 7th and 8th grade as content area teams, looking at what the priority standards are for the curriculum, which will help them to kind of see what was it that students needed to know at the end of last year, what do they need to know this year, and just kind of working together to better identify that so they can prioritize what to focus on.
Laura, I also want to say that, we are always concerned about gaps with students, especially after something like this, in the spring with possible academic loss. So we have built into the schedule, which is very different for our middle school this year, at the end of block 2, an additional time that whoever is in class with those students will be working with students testing or through classrooms again. We really don't know what we're defined with the STAR testing, and but we really don't. I'm hoping that our teachers worked really hard and it was rigorous still. I'm hoping that we're seeing, that we can maintain our scores that we have had, for the last years. but we did build in this in our schedule in case we need it. And if we don't need it, then we'll use it for enrichment. And for those students that show no gaps, that have maintained, then we will just keep moving with enrichment for them.
Okay.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Great questions. Katie Kubina.
Yeah, thank you. First, I wanted to say how grateful we are about how diligent the administration and teachers have been in this whole process. It's such a fluid situation and a challenging one, so we really appreciate all your efforts. I have 3 questions. The first one is I have a incoming 5th grader who on a normal day has some anxiety, and we have opted for the in-person option, whatever that plan may be. And I'm just wondering about that first day. I understand that orientation may be virtual, but will there be a fair amount of hand-holding of 5th graders so that they get oriented to the school in their classrooms and have some level of comfort, since the world is scary enough these days? The second and third question are very simple. I just wanted to know if there was any plan for fall sports or late buses related to that.
So I can answer the hand-holding question. We don't hold hands in the middle school. They will be very gently handled. Typically, the first 10 days of school, our 5th graders are met at the teachers meet them at their buses. They bring them into the auditorium, and then they walk them to and from every class. By the end of the 5th day, most 5th graders are running up to me saying, "Can you please tell my teacher to get away from me or stop following me? I can know where I'm going." So there will be hand holding. It will be it will have to look different once we establish the stable groups. We'll have to figure out what doors they're coming in, and we will have an abundance of staff meeting and greeting our 5th graders. So we'll have all our 5th grade teachers. We may have all our teacher assistants for the first week with our 5th grade. Like, it'll be all hands on deck, because we know they don't know the building. We know some of them have never been in the building, and we know they have no idea where they're going or what to expect. So it will be very gentle, and we will overstaff it.
If you don't mind me adding, we know as a district that in that first month, there's different things we're going to need to do to specifically address the social emotional needs of students as they come back. And that's something that we're intentional about, and that we're going to be providing professional development and training on that prior to the students coming back with the staff, and give them some additional strategies that they'll be able to use in that first month to just help and address some of the concerns for students. So we've got some great training coming up on supporting anxiety, trauma, a lot of different topics. And I know that, they'll be intentional in their classrooms about supporting the students as they return.
The other question you had was about the busing and the sports. So right now, we have a lot of holding on fall sports. They even at the high school level, they've only allowed girls tennis, girls game day, competitive cheer, and outdoor cross country. So nothing really contact based. Our athletic teams are sort of like doing skill based on our athletic plan, but the governor and the Department of Health are holding. And the late buses right now won't run because we actually need those buses to be able to transport elementary and the additional for the additional loads that we have to carry. So right now we won't have the capacity unless we have more registrations than we anticipate to run those late buses.
Thank you. That's all very helpful. I appreciate it.
No, the great questions. Thank you. Megan Gavin. Gavin?
Hi, thank you. So first I want to thank you for all of the work that you're putting in. It's definitely appreciated. I am a TA at Ashtray, so I'm seeing all the work behind the scenes, and we so appreciate it. I also have a nephew who is in the special ed program at the middle school, and I'm wondering what the plan will be in terms of having those students wear masks, because obviously if they're in like a self-contained classroom, that's harder for them. And I'm also wondering about if we're going to be having students outside. Safety has always kind of been a concern in terms of, school shooting. So I want to know that the kids are going to be safe when they're outside during classroom time.
So the special ed piece I can definitely tackle. If you, the district webpage, if you go to the special education department and click on it, and you scroll all the way down, the last piece is there, the special ed reopening piece. And Jen Durkin and Mary Markovich have put that together. So it's excellent. It's a question and answer, but it definitely gives an overview of everything that's going to happen within special ed. And then our self-contained classrooms are set up in such a way where they are very spacious. We have more space than is needed for those classrooms. There are 2 very large rooms, and we have purchased all the needed PPE and face masks and things so that we can make sure that if a student's not able to wear masks, we can make sure that if they're having any services done like PT or OT, that they will be protected. So masks will not be mandated if for medical reasons those students are unable to wear a mask, which some of them may be. So we will deal with that on an individual basis. I'm working very closely with Jen Durkin, and I don't see many concerns in those classrooms. I think we've talked individually with most of the parents, and I think we're in pretty good shape. So and we're pretty excited to welcome those students back.
And you had a question about the outside classrooms and with the safety. We were actually, I meet weekly with the chiefs of police, the fire marshals, and lots of conversations around no different than you would expect us to have practice drills inside the classroom. Like even our lockdowns are going to look different. What I can tell you is there's a way that we have to triage. It's like being a school nurse, right? If you have a child with a paper cut and then you have a child who broke their arm, you're going to attend to those differently. We're not going to, if there's a, God forbid, a school shooting or a school shooter, that takes precedence over COVID, right? That's a serious situation. So while we're going to, tape off the rooms for lockdowns and show students, instead of sitting everyone facing forward, they would sit, back to back, and we're going to be practicing all those new sort of things. We're not going to risk their safety. If there, God forbid, is an issue outside, then we're going to move quickly and we're going to get as many students inside as possible or away, which is really what the police chief has recognized. They've also been really great about saying they're all willing to come in those first few weeks and work with us to be able to think through that planning and observe and help us through, because it's going to look different. But I think we all agree that safety is always our number one priority, and things like a school shooter would always take precedence over, COVID, for example. And if we have our masks, we should be able to move quickly and do that. So it's scary to think about, but you're right. It's not something that we forgot, and that and I meet weekly with a lot of them to discuss just these topics, because the principals and the teachers have the same concerns. We also have the 2 SROs, which will be on staff and used outside during those times as well, as an extra sort of purview over the outdoor classrooms at the middle school and high school.
Thank you so much.
Betsy Alvarez.
Hi, thank you. I have 2 questions. One is in regards to students that have IEPs and have the RTI plans for math or reading. We talk about stable groups, but with these students here, they have special ed teachers, they have sometimes small groups or one-on-one meetings. My question is, how is that going to look? Are special ed teachers still going to be pushing in? Are they going to be pulling the students out? So that's one of my questions. And then my other question is, I've attended some of the other meetings, and it looks like the high school has a limited plan of having the grades come in, set weeks. Is that something that the middle school is thinking about doing, having 5th grade come in, 6th grade, 7th, 8th grade, et cetera? Or maybe having students that have the 504s, IEPs, et cetera? How is that going to look with the limited? So I know you touched on it, but is there a clear setup like the high school, or is it more loose? So that's just my 2 questions that I have tonight.
So most of the special ed and RTI services will be pushed into the classroom. So it is very likely that all services will take place within the stable group. So those teachers will be pushing in and working within the classroom with what needs to be done. And then if we have a limited reopening, which would be 25%, the state has made it clear that we would have to put our fifth graders in. So that basically takes up about 22% of our 25%. So then what is left over, it would be the percentage of those kids that are either we feel are struggling, or maybe our self-contained classrooms that we would keep in. But we are limited. If it's limited, it really limits the middle school, because because we're not 6 through 8, we're 5 through 8. So if it's limited open in at 25%, our fifth grade takes up a good amount of that 25%.
Okay, so that answers that question. So I was just curious, just in regards.
It's not loose to be loose. It's loose because there's very little room left over when the state mandates are met.
Okay, so that answers that question, because we don't know. It could change week to week, but just in regards for those of us that have opted in to go to school with our kids, we do need the planning for, who's going to watch the kids. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. Great questions. Sarah Dugas.
Hi, yes. Thank you for having this and welcome to the district. I had a question in regards to drop off. I have a 7th grader coming in, and I also have a 5th grader. And reading the previously drop off was we all go in the back, we drop off by the gym, and everyone enters the building and moves. This year, that will because right there, assume on one of those corners, but my 5th grader is all the way around the back of the building from the plans it looks like. Is there going to be a way that parents can access so 6th graders and 5th graders can go back there, drop off back there, or will we be dropping there and they walk all around the building to get to their stable location and entrance? That's it.
So once we have all the numbers in and we know exactly how many students are coming to school, we're going to revisit all the entrances and exits to see. And we're also going to, once transportation has been worked out, because if transportation is just going to go into the one loop they typically go into, that makes things differently. Where if the buses are going to go into multiple spots to stop to drop off kids, it could look different. So we don't have an answer until we have the numbers. But right now, it could be likely that students may have to walk a little bit on campus. And if that is the case, we will have adults outside to make sure that they're walking either on the walkways or that their roads are shut down so that there's no cars passing where they're walking. But we will logistically try to make it so that you're dropping your children off as close to where they need to get in the building as possible, just for convenience reasons, obviously. But until we have the numbers and we know exactly what entrances we're going to use, we haven't finalized any of that. So we just did a rough draft based on entrances and where kids typically would be housed.
And like Mrs. Annie, we're using the registrations are going to help us know, like we said, the busing. If we know that we have certain more cars coming in, let's say, we may have to stagger times about drop off so we don't have the jam that I've heard about with the traffic. So we understand that, but once we have a better handle on the numbers, like we said, we know it's double-edged sword. We know it's tough to make the decision now, but we also know it's going to be tough to plan if we don't have the decisions made. So we thank everyone for their flexibility. Jennifer.
Thank you.
Sorry, I couldn't find where to unmute me. Hi, welcome to the district, Jean. I think you've been doing a great job so far.
Thanks.
My question is more of a curiosity, and then my incoming 8th grader has a question. You had said so far that about 300 kids have opted for distance learning. What is the total population at the middle school right now?
It's about 960. It fluctuates by the day. Today might be 970 with new enrollments, but it's right around 960, 970.
Wow, okay. All right, and my 8th grader here has a question.
So I have a question actually about the drama club. I was wondering, like, if that's going to happen at all, or like if it is going to happen, how you would do it.
That's a great question. That since drama typically doesn't start at the beginning of the year, haven't even really thought about drama yet. I would probably have to sit down with Mrs. Cummins and start discussing it. I'm assuming that she's gonna be the drama director again, but because it's not something that starts on day one, it's not high on my list. I do apologize. But my philosophy through all this has been that I'm really big into sports and extracurricular activities and drama. I really believe that in Chara Hope we don't have those extras. Kids don't have much to do. We live in the woods. It can be really boring. So we are trying to keep as many programs as possible. A lot of things right now are being delayed in the fall. So I don't know, typically our play is in March. Maybe it's pushed to May. I'm not really sure. I would have to work with the high school too to see what their drama program will look like and when they need it. So we are going to have to work together, and I'm going to write it on my list of things that I should probably get on top of.
No, and it's
you don't know how badly she wants to talk on stage in 8th grade.
And as a mother of a drama student who missed her senior play and graduated through the pandemic, and I completely get that. So really what we, I don't know if you all saw the paper, but Rebecca Burns at the high school was able, after talking to legal counsel and our physician, Dr. Manlove, they were very crucial in really helping us think through that plan so it was safe and they could videotape that production. And really that's what it's going to be about for our educators. It's saying to them, this is what we know we have to do. Can you prepare a proposal that gets us here? And if they can, then we can move forward. So it's always like, how do you get to yes? So what we're not going to do is say no to everything. What we'd rather do is say, okay, this is the guidance. This is the guidelines. Can we do this safely? And what do we need to do? And then what we do is we run that through our legal counsel to ensure that we've thought through all of those boxes, as well as our physician, Dr. Manlove, to ensure that we're really thoughtful about how that has to look. So nothing's off the table. If we can make it happen, we will make it happen.
And one final thing, it just popped into my head. When the kids are required to do the virtual days, Mondays all virtual, and then if they're home, when they're home, the teachers will require that their videos are on, correct?
So just to be clear, there is the Monday distance learning that the state requires, they won't be on, because those 5 days, the teachers will be at professional development.
Right, that I understand, but I'm talking like
partial.
If everybody is, virtual on Monday, and then this group goes in Tuesday, Wednesday, that group goes in Thursday, Friday, when the kids are home and they're going on virtually, the teachers are going to require that their videos are on, so they're not just looking at a name, correct?
We have student expectations with the live camera, and if there's a family that has a concern for any reason, that they would just reach out to the administration around that concern.
Okay.
Yes, that is our expectation.
All right, great. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Tracy McCulloch, and then we have 2 more, and we're almost done.
Hi, thanks so much. I just had a follow-up question regarding distance learning and how it's going to be structured. Obviously, if you're not doing live Zooms within the classrooms, is there a separate distance learning teacher for each content? And are they going to be doing the same work as their team that they would be placed on if they were in school, if there is like going back to school Q2?
The way the plan works right now is that the teachers will have both in-person and distance learning students assigned to them. We don't have the numbers, so that may look a little bit different depending on what that looks like. But overall, our plan is, if you think of it like a rotation where, I have a group of students, and because what's going to happen is ultimately, sooner or later, everyone's going to be a distance learner, because Monday, everyone's distance learning on certain days, as well as if I have a cough, I may be an in-person learner, but I'm going to be out for a few days. And if it's a new cough, then there's all kinds of protocols, the playbook that I have to have, the quarantine, the testing. So ultimately, this is going to look very different. So every teacher, and that's why we want everyone to recognize that while in the spring, everyone was distance learning, we're asking teachers to shift again, as all of you are, to say, now do both at the same time. So that's a learning curve for all of us, and your feedback and your patience will be very crucial for us. But we get better the more we know what's going well, and we tell your children, like, tell the teacher, I really liked when you did this, or I really struggle when this happens, because that's how we know. We don't want students to be frustrated. We don't want families to be frustrated. And the teachers are anxious, right? This is, they're putting their practice, they're very worried about having to come back and figure out how to balance these both in person and hybrid, and if they're sick, if they're distance learning for the quarter. So we recognize that it's going to be a challenge, but know that it's fluid and we're willing to take feedback to improve upon that.
Okay, great. So if they're on a looping team from grade 7 to grade 8, will they have those same teachers even if they're distance learning?
That's a Mr. Zenny and Ms. Florin.
So the hope is yes. The hope is that we're not breaking up in our teams, but until we have all the numbers in and we start doing everything and we decide on exactly how everything's going to look, we don't have a definite answer to that. But my push, and it's a very strong push, is that we do not interrupt our teams. We keep our teams, because at some point we will get through this. And if it is during the school year, maybe I'm naive, but my hope is at some point we get our students back. And when we get our students back, I would like them to be back on the teams that we built, the way we run our middle school. So we're trying very hard to make it look like that in this new reality, so that when we get back to what things used to be like, whatever that is, we still have our teams in place.
Okay.
It is my best hope that they will be all on their teams. Yes.
Okay, great. Just one more question. I'm sorry. Obviously, like, this has been a tough decision for everybody, and I know in my family we've been struggling with it. I want my kids to go back to school, but then you're worried. If we did have them go back to school, but then had concerns, and I apologize if you answered this already, can we pull them at any time?
So we are going to ask that people stick with their decision. However, we also know that the family situation can shift and change, and there could be something that occurred that you didn't recognize was going to happen. So what we ask is that you simply set up a meeting with the administration to discuss the concern, so that we're clear, because there's things that maybe we can fix if we know about them. And if they feel that, that there's a concern that would be better off moving to distance learning, that they would make that decision with you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Donna Gagner.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to thank all of you, your staff, and I congratulate you for joining a district in a pandemic. Kudos to you for taking that on. I wanted to thank you for truly ensuring our health and safety for our children, while also working to provide the best educational experience during these trying times. And I had a question similar to Tracy's in regard to the distance learning, because I was wondering whether or not my child would have the same teacher that she had previous, because she is looping. She's going from 7th to 8th. And what would that look like? So she, from what I'm hearing from you, she's going to log on to a Zoom to check in with the lesson, and then the teacher is going to give an assignment that she's going to work on independently based on the lesson that the rest of the class is doing live at Charahoe. Is that correct?
That is one way the model can work, yes.
Okay. And then the other question that I was wondering about, I have two, are the numbers, because with the whole 6 feet separation thing, are the numbers changing for the classroom? Like, do you have additional staff to spread out the kids, or are you just removing furniture in the classroom to allow for the 6 feet of separation?
So currently, we set up every single classroom as if every single student was coming back. We removed almost everything else in the classrooms, but there is a teacher desk, and there are, if a classroom is supposed to have 22 students, there are 22 student desks, 22 chairs, a teacher desk and chair, 1 or 2 bookcases, and maybe a filing cabinet. And we have been able to set up every room with at least 4 feet apart for every student. And every room also has what we're calling mask break, which is an area at the back of the room which has at least 6 feet apart from it. So if a kid is hyperventilator or they're just sick of wearing the mask or they need a break, they can get up, go to the back of the room and pull the mask down. So every room has been created like that. And that's when we were fully enrolled. Once we get our numbers tomorrow, we will go back in, start building the stable groups, and then start pulling out even more desks because we won't need as many desks. For example, that classroom that has 22 desks in it right now may only need 16. And removing those 6 desks and chairs will probably give every student 5 feet. So we are definitely, we built it as if everyone was coming, and now we're rebuilding it as our numbers dictate who's coming.
The another question I had, you had mentioned that if a child is sick or has a cough, they're going to be staying home. So if a teacher is sick or has a cough, is she or he staying home, and then who is subbing? Or is the whole class doing it virtual that day, and how do you know that that's going to happen?
So it would be similar. It would be the same thing around. We're looking to get building substitutes for every building so that it's more stable. It does add an adult, but it would work very similarly. No, we wouldn't say that day, oh, this class is distance learning because the teacher has a cough. But we are asking staff to ensure that they're not coming to school sick as well. And it's going to be different for all of us. We've all, grown up in the times where we were told to, take a Tylenol and move on, buck up. But that's not the case. We're all going to sort of relearn that fact that we need to stay home. And the symptoms are listed in the Department of Health playbook around, the kinds of symptoms, the new cough, and if there's I have it right here too, 2 of the same symptoms. If you have the chills and a headache, you're staying home. If you have a sore throat and you have fatigue. So it makes it very clear, and then we will continue to send out that guidance to our families to make sure that we're going to put that self-attestation form so that you would actually be verifying every day that your child, and the staff will do it every day as well, that there are no symptoms. And then basically, if you have a new cough, shortness of breath, or difficulty breathing, or you lose your you lose your sense of taste or smell, you're staying home, staff or student, of just 1. And if you have 2 of, of the symptoms on the list, then you're staying home as well. And then a negative test would be required for those cases. And I know the governor is working on the testing, and she's talked about planning for mobile units where they would have them coming to the region areas to be able to get that testing done quickly. That's one of her metrics, not to reopen schools unless she can do that within the 24 to 48 hours.
Okay, thank you. So the students doing the distance learning, I just need to wrap this around my brain right now to visualize it. They are part of the live class and will be interacting with their responses and such for a time period during that. Yes.
Yes.
So it's like they're in the class, but they're just doing it via video.
Yeah, and like Mrs. Indian said, this way, if you do decide to come back after Q1, that they're with their peers and they're integrated really easily.
Back in. Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bethany's iPad. Just make
All
sure.
right, I unmuted. I'm sorry, I couldn't find the unmute. I had a quick question. My family's decided to distance learn, but I was curious whether or not there would be interscholastic sports. And if you're distance learning, can that child participate? My son had been interested in cross country, and he's waiting for 6th grade, and well, he's here.
So the Interscholastic League is putting forward the plans, and then they've approved us for cross country and for girls tennis and game day cheer. Even though I know that's game day, people keep asking me that, like, what are they cheering for? I think it's more like ready if they're competing. But that's also based on, that doesn't mean other sports won't happen. It just means they're not happening right away.
Okay, so if my son wanted to participate in cross country and he is distance learning, would he still be allowed to participate?
Yep, as long as they pass all the requirements of the typical athletic policy, then yes.
Okay, and if they had I know last year they had a meeting regarding what to do for joining the programs. Is there going to be a meeting or discussion about that to tell us what to do if you wanted to join?
Once what they've decided is nothing's going to start up until mid-September because they want us to get school up and running. And I believe no games can even be scheduled till the beginning of October as it stands right now, barring any changes. But yes, once we have more clear details on next steps, that you would be hearing from coaches and preparing for that.
So Mike Shields will, our athletic director, is very good at getting the word out about things, and then a lot of times he'll send it to us to put in our newsletters with their principals. So
okay,
it does get advertised very well once we do have those parent meetings, because we only do one per season. So he advertises it extremely well to make sure that it's very hard for people to say they didn't know about the meeting. So you should be able to hear about it.
I just concerned that if we're distance learning that we'll miss things, and I don't want that to happen.
I think Mike is very aware of it, and I don't think Mike wants anyone to miss out. And we're distance learning or in person, they're all Charahoe students and they all have a right to sports. So I don't think we're going to do anything intentionally to try to eliminate one group or the other. So we'll make sure we get it in our weekly updates too.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Juliana Lynch.
Hi.
Wow.
So my question is, if a student or a teacher has an exposure, will only the people who have been in contact be notified, or will the school send out a blanket notification to the community notifying us that there may have been an exposure, or if something progresses to an active case?
So that actually is a great question. And the Department of Health, every district is going to be assigned a liaison. So we will not make that decision. So we're not going to decide who gets contacted, how they get contacted. Very similar to how you get sort of notices based on whooping cough or lice, or all the typical things that we've seen in the past. The Department of Health will specifically ask us for our contact tracing information in our pods, and then will let us know the information that needs to be shared and who it needs to be shared with to ensure that we follow all those steps. So I can't tell you it'll be the entire community, but what I can tell you is they will let us know who and how we have to get that notification out. I know some parents are concerned about, like, will they know if my child's sent home? We would never give children's names, period.
Right.
But we also know, parents will say, hey, was Gina in school today? Or was Miss Florence there? Like, who was missing? So we can't stop that kind of stuff. But what we can tell you is that our staff understand that they're not giving out names or sharing information. But that all those decisions will be made with the Department of Health by our side.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Ebru Kosoglu.
Hi, first thing, I just want to say welcome to our district. I have one 5th grader and one 7th grader this year. My question is, last year my son didn't get a QCA or any tests. How are you guys gonna do in person and virtually? The kids gonna get a test, and they're gonna get all the scores, and then they're gonna get the semester finished like this. How are you guys gonna do it? How are they gonna virtually? They're gonna get test or in person? Thank you.
Yes, we are planning to move forward with our assessments. So at the end of the quarter, students will be having their QCAs. Some of the Unified Arts, most of them will not have them until the end of the semester, except for the foreign language will be at the quarter also. But we are moving forward with all of our assessments, with the STAR assessment also, which will be now mid-September. And if the students are virtual, they will be taking them at home.
Okay, and can I ask one more thing? And how you guys, is it gonna be any algebra classroom format? Because my son gonna go there and is still gonna go on.
For algebra?
Yeah.
Yes, we will. They will be having algebra.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, Laura Locke.
Hi. My question is, I'm concerned about the amount of screen time through distant learning. Very concerned. My guy is not coming back based on medical reasons, not by choice. So is there going to be, like, we had movement breaks put in the spring. Will we see that again with virtual learning? And my second question is, and I could have asked Greg this, but I didn't think of it when I talked to him earlier, and I don't like to bombard him with emails all the time. Would my son's 504 accommodations still apply? Some wouldn't because he's home, but like one of his accommodations, the teacher has to be aware of if he has hearing loss. So in school, he has a sound field system. So we struggled a little bit with a lot of chatter in virtual learning. Everyone trying to talk at one time. He tries to read lips. So how do would those accommodations still apply is my question.
So the 504 accommodations that can apply will. Right. So if there's an accommodation that we are capable of doing, we should be doing it.
Okay.
Laura, we may have to sit down and review. We're gonna have to sit down and review everything.
Okay.
But we're gonna have to make sure that the accommodations that any student needs to be successful, that is a reasonable accommodation.
Right.
You have to do it whether it's in person or virtual.
Okay.
You have to decide which ones are reasonable and what
Right.
can be done. And for example, the lip reading one will be very difficult with their, Zoom meetings and stuff. So we may have to start looking at other technologies that may be able to help with that.
Yeah.
So we'll look more into that. And then you had a second question with that.
It's that 6.5 hours a day. Are we going to have movement breaks built in, or is it going to be just like you're changing class and you're going to get ready to go?
So it's going to be, it right now looks like it will be a 7-period day because that's what the middle school is based on. And the commissioner has made it pretty clear that we have to follow the basic educational plan. So it's we're not legally allowed to cut anything out. But what can happen is we're going to require kids to sign in every period. So attendance would take every period, but that may mean a 10-minute live lesson for everyone. And then the kids that are remotely may be told by the teacher, you're working on this for your own for the next 20 minutes while I work with those students in class. And then I'm going to come to you guys. So say the class starts at, 7:30, that whole group lesson may happen to 7:45. And then your son may be told that he doesn't need to be back on to 8:10 to meet with the virtual group. That would be a really good time to start to develop with him. That's when you're going to take a movement break.
Right.
So
Okay.
you're not, and then with each class, he's going to have to figure out, because some teachers may have the virtual kids go before they're in class and some may switch it up. So, but there will be some time, and our second period and our 7th period have been extended for, and that will give some time. And then we still incorporate a half-hour lunch. We did not cut that at all. So there'll be a half-hour lunch break where, some movement, they can eat and have some movement. But it is going to, for virtual kids, it can be a long day. Yes, it's something we have struggled with, but we're, and then once you get to know the teachers, there may be some more flexibility, just like you saw this year with it.
Right. It's going to be hard to beat, but we'll roll with it. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, so 379105, and then that's our finale question.
I have a question. The kids who are doing distance learning, will there be a date to pick up books, like the RCC books?
So yeah, so basically, once we have the confirmation for everyone, Mr. Zenny and Ms. Florence, they'll send out sort of the updates about, just similar to how Mrs. Zenny said about the Chromebooks, and when they'll get those, they'll coordinate all that pickup of materials with that communication.
Okay.
Okay, well, that was you let us get off easy at the very end. I just
And
want to thank everyone. You want to go, Mrs. Zinnian? Go ahead.
I just was going to say that all that will probably be done through Teams. So if you're new to the middle school, just keep in mind you're going to be wanting to know, you want to pay attention to when your student's team is having things done. Because all like book pickup, everything is in the middle school is based on team. So we try to do everything by team. So there'll be certain times or dates per team.
So I just want to thank everyone for their time. And I know it was a longer night, and we appreciate that you logged in and asked your questions, because I think it helps all of us really think through and how we can get clearer and clarify what needs to be clarified for our families. What I can promise you is that it won't be perfect. I can promise you that we will make mistakes. But I can also promise you that we'll take your feedback, listen, and be thoughtful. We're going to be meeting we're still meeting every week, and we will continue that as school opens, because what we know is we have to be fluid and flexible. What's going to work for one child is never going to work. But what I can tell you is whether your child is distance learning or in-class learning, teachers weren't going to address every single question at the very moment when they had 22 kids in front of them. So they balance things all the time. And if anyone's going to figure this out, it'll be our educators who do this every day. But again, they're doing it new. We always tell our children that it's okay to make mistakes. That's how we learn. And I hope we all have the same passion for that when we think about our educators and our administrators, as we all sort of think through this journey together. So we appreciate your feedback. We appreciate the questions. Everyone always says it when they email us, I'm sorry for the question. Don't be sorry. It helps us think about, what's clear, what's not, what are people worried about. So it really does help. So thank you all and have a great night.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.